We're here in Geneva at Geneva Watch Days with none other than Nicholas Bowman-Scargill of Fears. We've seen three of the brand's latest watches today, known as the Fears Trinity. We've got a Jump Hour, we've got an all-new Brunswick 38 Charcoal Rose, but the watch I want to talk about today is the latest and most unusual Fears creation, which is the Redcliffe ES. Now, ES, Nicholas, stands for Endurance Specification. And before we chat about the watch itself, which we absolutely should because it's a beautiful watch and there's a lot to talk about from a product standpoint, I want to talk about ES and the Endurance Specification, what that means, and where it's going.
Certainly. So, the ES, as you say, for Endurance Specification, it actually has its roots in some heritage with Fears. So, back in the 19th century, we made certain pocket watches that actually were stamped Endurance with a Z on the dial. And these were meant to be tougher pocket watches, basically, less of the wearing it for dinner, more of wearing it when you're doing your active work. And we've been keen for a while to create a tool watch. So Endurance Specification means this is a tool watch more than a sports watch. Sporty in style, but tool in nature. And so the Endurance Specification means that everything has been done thinking of the function, and then the form follows after that.
One of the things you explained to me was ES becomes almost like a nameplate or something you could apply to future watches, future models, things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about where you see this going?
Certainly. So this is the first watch built to Endurance Specification. But going forward, we'll see there being, other pieces. So basically, think of it this way. The top watch in terms of toughness, ruggedness, will then be designated an ES. So this is the first of pieces over the coming years that will be in development.
Pretty cool. So let's chat about the watch itself. We've got it right here, Nicholas. I'm going to hand it to you because heaven knows what I'll do to that watch.
Well, it's tough enough to be dropped, so
Fair enough. Let's start with the overall design, and then I want to talk specifically about how you guys have approached case hardening, because I think that is fascinating. It's one of the most unusual things about this watch. But at a high level, tell us a little bit about what this watch is and about its design.
Certainly. So it's from our Redcliffe family. So a family that was the first watch that Fears created 9 years ago when restarting. 2 years ago, we brought in the new automatic Redcliffe line. So it shares similar dimensions, 39.5 millimeter round case, sharing the same silhouette of the round watches Fears used to make. A very slender watch, but a very tough watch in that the water resistance is 150 meters, but it's built to a higher standard. We always over-engineer than what we actually rate it at. But what we've then done is taken this and gone, how do we then beef this up? How do we make this endurance ready? And it starts with, who is this watch primarily aimed at? And it's thinking, everything from someone who's going out rock climbing, someone going out camping, doing an adventure, doing a hike, something where you want to know that the watch is going to be fine if something knocks it, dents it, but also, as we'll discuss, something that's incredibly legible. Under any lighting conditions, you can always read this watch. So whether that means, you're under canvas camping out with the family, or you're on a 12-hour transatlantic flight, this watch will always be readable.
Yeah, this is one of the things I love about this watch, and there are very few watches that do this and do it well. The IWC Mark series would be another group of watches that does this, which is when you look at the time on the dial of the watch, even out of the corner of your eye, you can't help but know what time it is. The time telling jumps off the dial of the watch. There's just a level of legibility, thanks not only to the color, thanks not only to the darker low light environments, the Lume, but also the way you approach the dial finishing itself. And we're going to talk about the case finishing, but the dial finishing, can you tell us a little bit about how you approach that for legibility?
Certainly. So we took quite a lot of learnings from the experimental 01 watch, which is a watch we built for a British world record attempt for Angus Collins to row around the United Kingdom. And with that, we had to work very much of having a dial which was out at sea, but without glare from the sun. So we took learnings from that, to go with this, but we wanted the very high contrast of white on black. And so we didn't want it to be distracting. It's got to very much blend in with the environment. And so we have this carbon-like texture, but then with a very special varnish and then clear matte lacquer on top. That means the dial, you can see the granular texture, but it does not reflect light. It's designed to pull in light and keep it.
Yeah, no, it is a light trap, and at any angle you look at this watch, if this watch is in your field of vision, you can immediately tell what time it is. I want to talk about the case hardening here,
Yes.
because this is also a first for Fears. And one of the things I think is most interesting about this case is you're using a number of different finishes, but one of the finishes you use is DLC. And I think a lot of times people will think about DLC as a liability with
Yes.
regard to case finishing and wear, something that can scratch. Now, look, DLC is a very hardened approach in and of itself. I think it has an unfair reputation. But in the way you've approached not just the hardening of the overall case, but the hardening of the bezel and the crown and the case back, the use of DLC is not a liability. In fact, it's a feature and something that improves the resistance of the watch to wear. So why don't we chat a little bit about how you've approached the case hardening overall, and then specifically how you did it for those components that do use the DLC treatment on top of the hardening.
So when we were looking at how the case was going to be finished, our regular Redcliffe case has brushed components, polished elements. For this, though, we've got to remember, this is about the watch being there as a tool, but not as a distraction. So that means no polished surfaces. Everything had to be frosted. And we tried different grades of frosting to find the right one that meant that it was a matte finish, but still felt solid. It didn't feel, like it was going to crumble. It had to feel solid. But then all case components, including the buckle as well, once they've been frosted, are then chemically hardened. Now, the chemical hardening takes it to a hardness of 2,000 Vickers. And to put that into perspective, regular stainless steel is around 220 Vickers. Titanium is a few hundred more. So we're taking it up to 2,000. And you then go for the exposed elements like the bezel, the crown, the case back, and the buckle. The
These
elements
are the most kind of prone to wear and abuse.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those elements, you then give them additional protection by DLCing on top of the hardening. And some people could question, well, why don't we just DLC the whole thing? But we didn't want to do that. This isn't meant to be a black watch. It's about using the different processes.
And this goes back to your point about
Exactly.
leading
And,
with function.
That's why when you look at the dial, there's a few extra things. It's not just the texture. This is the first watch we've made with molded Lume, applied indices. And we've used the new top grade of Swiss Superluminova X2, which only comes in white, which then glows green.
Yeah, and this thing glows like an absolute torch.
It's crazy. I mean, we always say with most luminescence, it will glow throughout the duration of a night's sleep. This is glowing by breakfast, by lunch the next day. The reason we went with molded Lume is because if you put the Lume into an applique, it's only glowing out. With this, it's glowing up, it's glowing sideways.
You get 180 degrees of glow.
Absolutely. These are also applied like indices on our other watches, so they're not glued on. And the reason is that means that each bit of molded Lume has two little feet molded into it. This is a safety measure. If the watch received a massive shock and a foot was to break, there's another foot as a backup. So the applique would never come out and jam the watch up. That's really important.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It's about building in those safety features. We also did something, it's wonderful when you're looking at the design. This is something our designer Lee is incredibly good with, is how do you make it feel like all there is just time on your wrist? And that's what he did with the Rehout ring on the outside of the dial. It helps bring the dial visually closer to the surface. We then have the orange seconds hand and orange seconds on the chapter ring. So even though there isn't a timing bezel, if you are timing something, you know that orange and orange is the seconds. So it's a very visual way. This goes back to when Fears were making their first central seconds wristwatches. They always painted the second hand red because they were being marketed towards doctors, physicians, people who needed to time something. essential seconds was key for doing that. So we've carried that across here.
It's brilliant. And, you know, the way you describe the effect of the rehaut and bringing sort of the handset and the dial almost to the surface of the crystal, that improves the legibility. The orange not only looks cool, but again, we're leading with function. It's a remarkable watch. It's in many ways a departure from Fears at first glance, but spiritually with its connection to the endurance pocket watches, with its connection to those design cues you mentioned historically, as with running seconds. It is a Fears watch through and through. Congratulations on a really cool and really well-built watch.
Thank you.
And of course, the Fears Redcliffe Endurance Specification, or ES, is available at collectivehorology.com. Get in touch or comment below with your thoughts and questions. And while you're at it, subscribe to this channel to stay up to date on all things independent watches. Thanks for watching.